Hello, I'm Glenn W. Hunter, and with me, once again, our subject matter expert, Shorr Denny of Community Now, and we are the three C's of SEL, communication, community, and collaboration. And today we're going to talk about the fact there's a new day. We're recording this on Inauguration Day. We've had a change in leadership in the United States of America, and there is a new day. Shorr, how do you feel about today being the new day?
Yay! I have been waiting for this time. I wasn't sure it was going to come. I had so much doubt and fear, and here we are. Thankfully, I woke up today and I feel like I'm born again. How about that? I feel like I have all kinds of opportunities in front of me, and the worst of my nightmares are behind me.
So, when you think about the fact that the worst of your nightmares are behind you, got this enthusiasm, all of this is helping us breathe, which is one of the things you like to advocate as we work with social emotional learning and talking about how best to cope. But when you think about in the macro, we have a new president. We're at the beginning of a new calendar year. And it's not just us as adults. This impacts all of us, especially our children. To teach our youth about embracing a new beginning, how do we use this new president, this new year, so that they realize we really are at a point of a new beginning?
It's going to differ at different times, and I don't know if there's like just one thing you can say, because it depends on how it ends, right? How it begins, and it depends on how it was. So, and if we're talking about the politics of this country, it's a different statement, because usually we want to have achievement at the end. When you're coming to the end, you're achieving your goal, you're attaining. And then when you start again, you're starting a new project, you're starting something new, right? So in life, sometimes though, the end of something doesn't have to be positive. You might not have achieved that goal, right? It might not end well. So when you're talking about that new beginning, I think we have to just start looking at different coping strategies that we can use, that no matter how it ended, that a beginning is something new, it's fresh, we start over. So there are all possibilities. So to me, the coping strategy would be to again breathe, but to say, what can I do in this new time? What are my goals for this new time, and how can I achieve them? And do that in a way that's positive, to where you're going to achieve the goal. Don't set anything that you're going to fail at. Don't set it up so you fail. Don't plan it so that it's not something you can sustain. So for a youth to start the new, we would just celebrate that something has started and have positive ideals and goals. And I think another thing would be to be very clear of what achievement is, what your goal is, so that when you accomplish it, you recognize that and you're able to celebrate.
In a lot of the work you do with the community, you get to deal with a breadth of young ladies. Some of them are maybe a little bit more affluent. Some of them may be a little less affluent. But there is a consistency in their desire to reflect who they are. I mean, you may have a wallflower here or there, but for the most part, our young ladies, especially our young ladies of color, they want you to know who they are. So from a new beginnings, and I don't want to let this go because it is such a magical moment. How do you help them guide who they want to be so that it remains positive, especially in a moment like this?
Though this is exciting for us. This is the moment for us, for all little brown girls, for all girls, especially for all little brown girls, that they just saw Kamala Harris get sworn in as vice president. This is a day that has never been in this country. This is a day where we can feel that we belong, that we are one, that we can achieve, that there is no glass ceiling or any way that we can be stopped. When Kamala Harris stood there and she stood with her chest, her chest out and her head up, and she did that swearing in. She stood there with pride for all of us, for our little girls, for them to see themselves on that stage and to know that they can accomplish. So we, as being the people and the adults around our youth, just need to support that idea that yes, we can accomplish all. We can accomplish anything. Us and our little girls, we can do it all. Um, Along with that, in our social emotional world, we have to also talk about, yeah, you can achieve it all, but there's a price, right? So what you want to do is make sure that you're happy as you're achieving, not that you are giving up everything for that goal. There has to be a balance of life, work, play, right? You've got to have a balance in there. So self-care is always going to be the key. So to my little ones, I always say to look at yourself with pride, think of yourself with beauty, and that will come out in everything that you do. Have pride in yourself and believe in your own beauty.
You know, when you start talking about that pride in self and the beauty, one of the beautiful things that I admire, especially as Kabbalah's doing her swearing in, is that her husband is with her, not trying to be subservient. He's not like sweeping the floor in front of her or anything like that, but he is there with her. And when you see him with the other former presidents, he's interacting with those gentlemen. That there's not just a partnership, but it's like, this is my companion, this is my life partner, but we're working toward a common goal. And at this point, Kamala is the major influencer in that relationship. She has the world's attention, and he's very comfortable with it. How do our young ladies learn from that image?
There's so much to unpack in what you just said, but I would think that they see what true male strength is. I think that all men should look at this man. I
Mm-hmm.
really think that there is something that can be said for the fact of his grace, his silent grace, and his silent strength and power standing there beside her and allowing her to be her is something that I think more men need to pay attention to with the strength of their woman. There's a lot of times where, especially in a minority community, where women, black women especially, are too strong. We are always told we're too, too independent, too. So this was a time where I think that you find that men can come up or be at that level with that woman, that the male does not have to dominate, that he can be that partner, that person that's right there. They're meeting each other in the middle. There's no subserviency on either side, and I think that that's what a true relationship is.
You know, I think the fact that we'll now be able to see that at the highest level of government, I think is a very powerful notion for the entire nation. You know, again, he calls himself the second gentleman. And I don't know if you knew, but they've actually given him a tweet at second gentleman.
Isn't that
That's his Twitter
lovely?
handle, so that he can actually have official duties in support of the vice president of the United States. And I think, again, for our young ladies, that's a very important image, that as a partner, there are responsibilities, there is dignity if you have the right partner. So my encouragement is, young ladies, continue to be very discriminating about who you attach to.
Well, we need to throw that shout out to the boys, because look what you can become, is what I would say to the young men out there. Look at the power that you can have, because that's a very powerful man, and look at the power that you can have without having to push that power around or prove the power or show people the power. Just, I think that the young men in this world need to look at him as an example.
I do agree. I do agree. And so, one of the other things that I really wanted to bring to light as we're doing this pivot isn't just with our youth, but we are going to focus there. It's with the educators. Because just as we talk about new beginnings, it's a new year, new calendar year. They're working their way back in from the break. Particularly here, we can't escape it. We're in the pandemic here in the Inland Empire in Southern California. That continues to be a huge factor in how we live our lives day to day. But one of the things from my conversations with some of our educators is that they're admitting privately that they're starting to experience fatigue. They are being burdened because this is a lot on them. And we've covered that in a number of our previous podcasts. So again, looking at it from a perspective of communication, community, and collaboration, um, what measures do you see that we have to empower our educators? How do we help our educators so that they can continue to help our youth?
Community now has a program called Coaching for Cultural Success. And I believe that we developed this program based on what we felt were the needs of the community, the school community, the youth, and the educators. And what I believe that our educators need, I think what we all need is, first off, a common understanding of history. I think that it's very important that we agree on some certain points that we can then move from, because if we don't have any common ground to communicate on, it's hard to communicate. So I think our educators need education of what happened here in America, number one. Then I think that with that, they need to go through some trauma informed and ACE awareness, where they can start seeing what has happened to them, and see how maybe some of these traumatizing situations they might be able to see in their youth. How can we communicate on a more personal level other than seeing the harm that has happened to me in you, and how I might be able to help you through that? So I think that we need to empower our educators by teaching them, increasing their emotional intelligence and life skills. I think this is an approach that's not been done in schools until recently, to where we build our educators in empathy and in social awareness and social interaction, so that they interact much more positively with our youth and other educators, and everyone else in their life. So to me, that's how we would do it, by giving them the tools that they need to navigate in this new world.
Now, you bring up ACE awareness, which I know that's something you're very passionate about. And I think about the fact that as that tool continues to evolve, there are certain applications that come with our minority population, just as a virtue or by virtue of that cross cultural experience, living in two cultural worlds, regardless of what your neighborhood looks like. Can you go a little bit deeper with ACE awareness, but really what it means to basically our youth as they're developing, specifically because they are youth of color?
Well, the understanding of ACE, there are 10 ACEs at this point, and they kind of vary in the wording, but there are 10 adverse things that can happen to a person before the age of 18. And these 10 things, or any number of them in a combination, can harm the way that a person is developed. I personally have a 9 as my ACE score, and I believe that that's kind of how we should communicate with each other, is hi. I don't think it might need to be in the first sentence, but we need to communicate what our ACE number is, so that I can kind of understand where you are in the world and you can understand me. Being a 9, having a 9 as an ACE score, a person with a 0 is very alien to me. When I come into a conversation with someone that's a 0, we truly, even if we're in the same profession, we are really far apart in our perspective of the world. A lot of that filters down, though, because trauma, which ACEs bring, are trauma, and any numbers of traumas can happen to you after the age of 18. So many educators are traumatized still, just it didn't happen between the ages of 0 and 18. Now, the 0 and 18ers, like me, have long-term adverse effects of the ACEs that we have. I am a 9, so the only one that I don't have would be that I think there was one, oh, I can't even remember. I'm sorry. There's one of the ACEs that I don't have. So I could say that, I have been harmed. I've been physically harmed. I've been mentally harmed. I've been starved. I've been homeless. So there are all of these things that impact our youth and impact their perception of the world that they are in and their value in the world. So when we as educators are looking at our youth, we have to understand that and understand how we can help them with their perception and how we perceive our world and how we perceive them. If I feel that I did things in my youth or things happened to me in my youth that made me unclean, and this is a lot, this happens a lot, where I don't see the value of me. When I am working with other youth, even if I see they're harmed,
Mhm.
I don't have the value for them because I don't have the value for me. So it's seeing each other and the value of being human. Up till this point, many people lied. They either felt that they were God or robots, right? Up until COVID, even. You know, you said, "How are you doing?" "Oh, I'm fine, perfect." Everything was perfect. Their house was perfect. Their job's perfect. Their kids are perfect. The house, you know, everything. Their kids better come in with A's because they didn't want to tell anybody they came with a C or a D. So all of that fakeness has harmed us and made us unwell. Now we can share the trauma. Right now, I don't have the worry of being perfect because I'm not. I've been harmed. Things have happened to me. And in every educational surrounding an environment that I'm in, and we do the ACE test in a group, 80 to 90% of the group have more than 3 ACEs. 80 to
Mhm.
90%. And that could be 4 people in a room. 80 to 90% have at least 3 ACEs. So we need to have an understanding of that commonality. And then we need trauma informed practices and strategies so that we can learn how to cope with that and learn how to build ourselves and be strong. I hope
Yeah.
that
No,
I
you totally grabbed the question. And and the thing about it that once we start talking about ACEs, it just opens up so many more windows. I mean, because primarily, you have to acknowledge the fact that even our teachers are bringing that baggage with them as well.
and some don't know it until we do the exercise and they count their aces, and then when I show them the outcomes, right, things that can happen, people with the 4 aces or more are 11 times more likely to use intravenous drugs. They are
Mhm.
three like 4.5 times more likely to commit to they're 20 times more likely to commit suicide, 4.5 more times likely to have like liver disease and lung disease because we don't cope properly, and we start drinking or we start smoking, and those are our coping mechanisms, but they break down our bodies.
Right.
So I'm trying to cope that I was, and this is not me personally. I mean, I'm not going to disclose as much about myself as anybody in the world. I'm trying to cope because I was raped as a child, but then I don't know how to cope with it right now. Every perspective that I have, every time I look at men, I'm afraid of the man. It changed my whole idea of marriage. It changed. So, how do I deal with that? And that would come in through trauma informed approaches, where now that I recognize that something has happened to me, now I can start dealing with it and talking and bringing things into play to help me cope and deal in the world. Now, I might never change the fact that I don't, I'm not real happy with men, but I won't be traumatized from it. I won't change my whole world because of it.
So as we're looking at all of these different components that are working with our youth, working with our teachers, we're putting them all into a high pressure cooker environment. There's a newness to the virtual learning, that there are several opportunities for things to go wrong. I choose to look at it half full, and there are opportunities for things to go right. And I think some of the things that you've talked about, Shore, specifically about the communication, about having that lens, about understanding trauma, both as an educator and as a youth, so that you know that you are okay. As people, we want to be okay, I think is very valuable for the improvement of our community.
And for the mindset of the people right now, if you have them in a room and you've got a group of people in a room and 90% of them are saying something happened, and then you go and you're talking about the effects of that, and that group is saying that, oh, they have depression, that they're not very good in relationships or having problems with relationships, that emotionally, there's different response issues that they have, that mentally or cognitively there might be delays. When you start looking at this and seeing what could happen to you because of these ACEs. It's an awakening for our educators, and as we're doing that and we're having them view their students, right, as they're looking at, think of Johnny, think of Sam, think of Beth. When you're looking at this, then they can go, oh my God. Because the thing is that our kids they're not going to school to just sit there to not absorb anything. I just don't believe it. There are things going on in their lives and they're not able sometimes to learn. The survival mind, when we talk about coping with our youth, a lot of times people say, why didn't they teach them? Why didn't the parents teach their kids, right? And I want you to know that every youth is coming to us equipped with every coping skill that they have gained since birth. They are prepared. They're prepared to go home and not eat. They're prepared to go home and be beaten. They're prepared to do what they need to do in whatever environment that they grew up in. Just because they're not prepared to sit there and watch you to learn doesn't mean that they don't have coping skills. It just means that they have not been, conditioned into, the environment that you want them to be in. And that comes in, that can be cultural differences. There are a lot of things that go into that. And I think our teachers need to know that there are cultural issues with our little kids here's an example. I heard of a youth that got suspended from a school because a black boy got suspended from school because a child of a different race came up. He had cornrows in his hair and they came up and patted him on his head. In the black culture, it's time to fight. It's disrespectful. It's very disrespectful. It's something we will not accept. No one will ever see you accept it, or you will not live it down. So it's something you have to deal with as soon as it happens. But on the other side of the culture, they're like, I just wanted to feel and he punched me, right? I mean, it's two different sides. That's a cultural issue. But that youth got suspended, right? And he is still in the bad, even though he felt provoked because of what the other youth did. So there are a lot of small cultural things that we need to help our educators understand so that they can work better with our youth.
I'm glad you point that out, because some of those nuances are actually very significant if you're not sensitive to what's happening on the other side of the culture. So I think as we're looking at this in its totality, the whole idea of being empathetic, the idea of listening, of understanding, being respectful, really funnels into more effectiveness in our learning environments and the development of our youth. And I
Yes.
think, Shorr, you've done a tremendous job of bringing so many different elements just in this conversation of what can go wrong, but how it can also be corrected with the proper tools, both from a youth standpoint and an educator standpoint. So with that in mind, how do folks reach you?
Oh, communitynow.info, or you can call 951-413-6587. We'd love to hear from you. Give us comments. You can give us suggestions on what to do here, or find out about our services that we do. We work with counties, we work with cities, we work with school districts. We have a lot of good things out there.
Outstanding. Once again, I'm Glenn W. Hunter. Very thankful that I get to work with Shorr Denny, our subject matter expert. And as we wrap this up and we're making those pivots and we're seeing the new day, let's embrace the moment. Let's make sure we're ready for the good things that are out there for us to enjoy and benefit and share. And
Yes.
above all, I always implore you, be safe.
Be safe.
Thank you.